You want them to where you hopefully are peaking. You've got all your kinks worked out. Obviously, we still have some kinks to work out with starts and some things and finishes sometimes along the way there, but it's a good time of the year to have those. Two important ones, one on the road, one at home. Separation week, I mean, you can't avoid it. You don't necessarily have to talk about it and harp on it, but it does. You have this week sometime in February. You look historically where we have been. It's always sometime in February we have a week, something like this. It's important that we do have good practice, good travel, everything goes as smooth as it can so we can play hopefully peak at the right time.
Yeah, and then just first of all, starting with Texas A&M, I know they've been pretty good defensively this year. What have you seen about them that makes them be able to be so good?
Size around the basket. They've got rim protectors. Lauren Ware does that. Barker does that. Kuabali does that at her position. I don't know whether India Rogers will play or not play, but they've got a dynamic perimeter player as well. So they can pressure the ball. They can pressure you into turnovers. They can disrupt you on the perimeter, knowing that there's somebody back there around the basket to change your shots, if not block them. And then they rebound it really well. You don't get a lot of second opportunities. They do it without fouling. So it'd be important for us to be aggressive, but also have some wisdom about where our shots come and when they come. So I think some of their numbers too are a little bit of a product of their offense, like their points per game. They don't play real fast on offense, so their points per game are not as high. But holding people to 35% on the year is a good thing. That's just kind of one of those pillars of Coach Taylor's teams. They're going to defend, they're going to rebound. It's going to be hard to pass it and dribble it against them, so you have to really cut hard. You have to minimize long passes. You have to shorten some actions up. But I think knowing going into that will allow us to get our guys' practice team out here, and they'll be really happy because they can play as hard as they want today and against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, very similar defensively, all they have different tactics. They both really have, kind of built their identity around their defensive side.
And then last thing I got is I know probably can't go into the specifics of it with Talia. Is it kind of a situation that you might not – what's kind of the timetable do you know of with her?
It's going to keep being day to day. We're just checking on her daily and see. We will operate as if she's not going to be here until we know that she is. Okay. But ask everybody to continue to keep her in your thoughts.
Thank you.
You got it.
All right, Porter, go ahead.
Coach, last couple of years, you've really been in this same situation, but, right around 500 in conference play. So this last 4 games, what's been the message of knowing the importance of being above 500 in conference play to really get that spot in the NCAA tournament and not really letting the team fall in the committee's hands?
Just remembering the sting that it felt like, but also the pressure that we kind of got to put on ourselves. We've tried to alleviate some of the pressure, but still tell the story and know I don't have to go in there with a big speech or a big presentation to let them know that they read social media and they read the news. They read the real news. So they know it's a big week. We won't harp on it any extra. It's not just the last couple of years, Porter, it's every year in this league for us at Arkansas. We always are. It's the exception rather than the rule to be fighting to get in. There's been a few years that we were comfortable and thought we might get to host before a pandemic came along, but we're used to it. I think the fact that we know what it feels like. It's kind of like going to altitude for the first time. The first time you're in altitude, you think you're going to die because you can't breathe. And then the next time you go, you expect it, you can breathe and you can have a good time. And the third time you go, you can breathe and hike and play golf and you just take a little bit extra. So I think hopefully it's helpful to us to know that they're all still worth one, but they do tend to magnify as you start to run out of games on the back end of that deal down to 4 regular season games. So fortunately, all our kids are good at math and they know how many it takes and all that. So I don't have to do a lot of talking anymore. I think we've done that in the past. Now it's show up and try to be the best version of the team that we want to be. And 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 try to be that team that's our good team. We know our good is good and our bad is bad. Let's try to be the team that's at the good side of the spectrum for as close to 40 minutes as we can be. So I think the fact that we've been there before, live there, that's where we are, that's how we operate. I hope that gives us a sense of confidence and not any extra pressure.
Well, kind of piggybacking off that, just the physicality of these Final Four games and not having a hangover leading into the SEC tournament, that determining also your fate in the NCAA tournament. How important is it to stay fresh these Final Four games?
Vital. It's vital. I mean, it's, I'm sitting here on one of my screens talking to y'all. On the other screen, I'm typing out the practice schedule, and I just cut 10 minutes out of it knowing exactly what you're talking about. This is, you have to be very mindful of every minute that you put on their bodies and make sure it's not, it's not just a drill you're doing because it's a drill that you have on the practice schedule. It needs to have purpose. We need to practice with a great deal of purpose so that we do have max minutes is what we call around. I need you for max minutes tonight, not max practice. Max minutes on Thursday and max minutes again on Sunday and then again on Thursday and then again on Sunday and then again that next week. So I don't think you can, expect that or ask that out of a kid if you haven't done the work ahead of time. I do think that's one reason our kids feel comfortable playing 38 to 40 minutes a night is they know that we in the lead up to it have been very intentional in our practice and in our travel on how we manage that for them, help manage it. So I think they know that we've done all those things so that when it comes game time, they do feel confident to go out there and play 40 minutes as needed. So
and
keep doing that.
Final thing for me, just, with Sunday, and Michaela's one of her final games in Fayetteville, what can we expect? Do you have anything special planned for that game or anything kind of like what you did with Amber?
We do. I didn't know if we were doing, because South Carolina's a Thursday game, right? Yeah, we do have some cool stuff coming. I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag, but there's some cool stuff. I don't usually turn to social media or please, but one time a year. I know how hard it is to get out to our games, but we're going to save my one time a year for making sure as many people show up next Sunday for her and make it special for them to be there and be a part of it as well. So I'll get on my soapbox after we get back from College Station.
That's all I got. Thank you.
You got it. You'll want to be one of the first 1,000 people there. Let me put it that way. Or 500. I'm not sure, whatever the number is. Be one of the first people in the door.
It's 750 or 1,000. I don't know what it is, but
Somewhere in between.
yeah. Jacob, go ahead.
Hey, Coach. I just wanted to ask you about Miriam. As a coach, you've mentioned obviously she's a quiet kid, but you see these flashes like, this past game in the third quarter, 6 of 6, 13 points. How do you? I remember you saying after the game when she comes to you quietly and says, Coach, I think I can get open. You got to find her a way to get the ball. How do you continue to push her to be more aggressive inside? Because you guys are such a different team when she's firing like that.
I think you have to put her in positions where she's able to be successful. It's something that I learned as a 7th grade coach at Bentonville. Don't ever put kids in positions before they're ready, because it can really, even though you're showing them confidence, if they're not ready for them, sometimes it can set them back a little wrong. I just think keep doing what we're doing, letting those moments present themselves, not trying to force the issue. When the moments arise, make sure we take advantage of them. Keep showing her the positives. Miriam is, like I've said before, she is certainly not an introverted kid. She's just quiet. And there's a big difference between those two types of people. So making sure she's got opportunity to be successful and challenged. She's also a kid that wants challenges. She is very growth mindset, has a very big growth mindset. She wants to be counted on. She wants a lot demanded of her. She wants to be yelled and screamed at times, which I still find really hard to do. But she thrives on that. So I fake it sometimes, and I can't keep a very straight face sometimes when I'm doing it. But I think we have to just continue to work with her and again, put her in spots where she is going to be successful. We are still tip of the iceberg. We know that there is a great future ahead for for her on and off the court. But I think to answer your question with a lot of words, but I could have answered very simply, just keep giving her opportunities to be successful.
And then I wanted to ask, you mentioned obviously Texas A&M playing a little bit slower. What sort of challenges are presented? And I know you guys like to get out and run. When you have two contrasting styles like that, what sort of challenges are presented?
Well, it limits your possessions, and when you're used to playing X number of possessions and all of a sudden that's cut by a third, you can tend to lose your sense of value for each possession. So, like, for instance, I was mentioning my practice schedule, we may normally do 8 to 10 reps with some offense. Today, you're only going to get 5 or 6 because you're only going to get 5 or 6, that same percentage in the game. You're just not going to have, as many opportunities to get hot. We are kind of built on that. We go through spurts, but that goes both ways too. If that can go both ways. An 8-point lead against Missouri doesn't feel safe until the buzzer goes off. An 8-point lead against somebody that is used to playing a little bit slower feels a little different. So I think we have to, as coaches, make sure we put them in that framework in their mind to know that the possession numbers collapsed. We can't all each have a my bad on offense and a my bad on defense to get going, which seems to be our thing. If you just break down the first 4 minutes of the Missouri game the other night, that's a microcosm of us. We each made a defensive mistake. We probably each made a couple of offensive mistakes, and it was a my bad, and we got a timeout, and I let them all say my bad to each other, and then we played better. So you can't do that against an A&M or even Mississippi State or South Carolina or Vandy that 4 games in a row are like this. If we each need one of those on offense and one of those on defense, we might be down 15 to 3 or 4 what we were the other day. And against those teams, it meant it's an incredibly hard challenge to try to come back from. So, my message will be focused from our tip-off of practice today, tomorrow, and then from the tip-off of each games.
And then I know you're going to get on your soapbox about Michaela a little bit later in the week, but just obviously it is a big week leading up into that. You don't have to give your whole spiel now, but just in short, I guess, what has she meant to this program? And is it kind of surreal that you're kind of coming up on this week and finally honoring her?
Yeah, it is. As we start getting those things together that you do on senior days, just making sure she's in the proper perspective of our fans, what she has done and how that she's got us to a place of consistency. Obviously, as of yet, we don't have a banner to hang or a final, but that's not what it's all about. So making sure the perspective is understood of how many days she's allowed us to live above 500 and be in the postseason every year. Whether that's the NCAA or the NIT, just speak to the history of this program, the 33-year history, and where she falls in place with that, and make sure she gets the proper respect paid. And I will be on my soapbox. I'll be spouting out some stats that I've been saving for 5 years and working on for 5 years, because there is a perspective, there's a historical perspective that people that haven't been here for 33 years might not understand. So, and again, I go back to when she said yes to us. I mean, she could have gone a lot of different places that had a lot more to say about what they were doing at that point, but she saw what we were going to do and what we could do with her here, and as part of it and how she's grown. It's going to be fun to look back and see those freshman pictures of Mac, baby Mac, we call her, and now grown up Mac. So it'll be a fun day. She's quietly sentimental. She's not an over the top kid when it comes to things like that, but I think it'll be a really, really special day and a special few days leading up to it. And then beyond, but certainly make sure that, and it's also fitting that she's kind of the only one we have that day. We may have some managers. I haven't double checked to see if we have any managers that are going to go through their walk, but I honestly think she's the only one we'll be honoring that day. So it's kind of fitting that that's going to fall that way.
Thanks, Coach.
Got it.
All right, Ethan and then Porter.
Yeah, real quick, just bouncing off that, in the grand scheme of, you've coached a lot of players, not many for 5 years at one spot. Just
Yep.
how special is she in your whole scope of players you've coached to you?
I rank everything. Y'all know I do that, but I draw the line at ranking people. But she's got so many fond memories. One that, again, my kids know by name, by sight, by number, we were watching game last night and the score was 43 and he goes, "There's Mac's number." I didn't even know he knew his number's up that high yet, but thanks to number blocks, he does. I found out. And then if you add them together, that equals 7, he told me. So I learned all kinds of things last night, but she's a kid we'll tell a lot of stories about over the years. Don't know that a book will ever be written, but there'll be a chapter with Mac in there because of how she's gone about doing it. I still say this: of all the freshmen I've ever coached, she is the most freshman ready to handle life as a freshman. Her business, her school, her life, her finances, her basketball, her I beg and beg and beg Kenny and Juanetta to write a book because it would be a bestseller. Because she has, among all the players I've ever coached, that's the one thing I'll remember about her is how she's just handled herself, and the teammate that she's become throughout her 5 years. You just, as you said, have I ever coached a kid for 5 years? I've started thinking whether I have or not. I've only been a couple of places for 5 years, so it's going to be an easy. I'll just have to go back and look at Washington to see if I had anybody there while I was there 5 years.
And then last thing I have real quick is just with the uncertainty of, if you're like with Talia and you've had some uncertainty all season, it feels like, with just situations, how comfortable are you at this point, this late in the season, that your team has, they're used to that's just kind of whoever's there steps up?
That is a great observation. And I was having the conversation with a coaching buddy last night. And they're like, "Man, what do you know?" I said, "It just feels normal now. It's like anything else. It does tend to normalize." And I honestly think we're probably ahead of the game with this one. I think it's where the whole thing's headed. I think the next 5 years, until things start to get back to where we understand the rules of engagement, we're all still operating with rules that change daily. I think you have to be able to pivot. I heard some people not even talking about sports, just kind of talking that's where society's headed. Your ability to pivot and not have a plan that has to be so stringently. It's good for me because I've never really been that person anyway. But to answer to your point, I think we're all that way. I think our team's that way. I don't think, it's challenged my way of thinking because I've always been one that thought kids like to know, get a starting lineup, stick with it, stick who comes 5. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about that. That's always my greatest fear about everything I do. But I do think we have become comfortable in making sure that whoever's number gets called, they're ready to play. So we'll see how this week goes. Porter?
Coach, going back to Michaela, not everybody gets the chance to get stuff back, and having that year taken away from y'all in essence of the postseason play. How rewarding has it been for you as a coach to essentially get that year back with her?
It obviously is good for her. It makes me think about the kids that didn't. I think about Toll-Free a lot. A kid that really would have. So it makes me obviously thankful to have had it, but it makes me think as much about the kids that didn't get to get that year. I'm glad for those student athletes that they got the opportunity, but I tend to always think more maybe about the people that did not. I know Mac is grateful for it. I'm glad it was Mac because not everybody is as grateful for that as she is. To get a chance to hear her say the things that she said at media day and about our program and about our players and our staff and the city and the university. We've got it filed away for recruiting trips and recruiting visits. And there's a kid that did stay. It was worth staying. It was not, she had plenty of opportunity just like everybody else. Y'all can pretty much assume that every starter in the SEC is being contacted by multiple sources to see if they're going back to that school every year. So she had plenty of opportunities to do things closer to home, at a more established place, at a teams in our league that may have been finished. They've all been through it. And she decided that she was a Razorback, so that's why I want it celebrated. That's why I want it remembered. And as long as anybody will listen to my words, I'm going to keep talking about, the decision that she made and the way that she's gone about doing it for sure.
Thank you, Coach.
Yep.
Thanks, y'all.
Appreciate y'all.